Well, the first shot was fired with this Red Sox Giants trade to tell you that the trade deadline isn't close, but we're about to see some big time moves being made. We're going to talk about the Cubs and some trade targets that they could potentially have. That and more right here on the Cubs baseball channel. Like, subscribe, thumbs up. Let's get this party started. Great to see you guys today. And go Cubs. What a really nice win in extra innings and a tough series against the Pirates, but getting it done, unlike those Cardinals. What do you say, everybody? Mick Gillespie, Cubs baseball channel, and it is a pleasure to talk to you guys today, as always. At least we try to do shows every day. It is a game for us because we love the Cubs. First place Cubs, okay? Now let's talk about how this team could potentially get better. And we'll start with something that we're going to keep on getting into, trade rumors, because we're just trying to figure out what things are going to look like for this franchise and this front office and this team as we move further and further down the season, right? And eventually hit the trade deadline and the All-Star break and all that stuff. So look, these are some of the names that are starting to be bandied around as potential trade targets. Guys off of the Athletic, MLB radio, constantly kind of throwing names out there. And you wonder, how accurate those are. I mean, when you start hearing guys like Bob Nightingale or Ken Rosenthal, John Morosi, you start hearing them kind of really target, in on a guy or two, then you know that they've heard from an agent, an executive, a scout, that's kind of the direction things are going. So I don't think we're quite there yet. But I think what we're doing is we're looking at the market and going, okay, who could the Cubs potentially target? And the guy that we talked about on the show a little bit yesterday, and thank you to Naren for hanging, was Chris Sale. Now, I don't know, because he's not on this list of guys we're going to talk about today, if the Braves are going to be willing to trade him, what that would look like, the money and all that stuff. But you want somebody at the top of your rotation that could get it done. I mean, it'd be him. So let's get into some other names that are interesting right now that could be potentially out there for the Cubs, right? And I guess you really have, there's probably a good list, 5-6 guys that you're like, okay, here's who I think would be an easy acquisition or someone that the Cubs would want, right? I say that if you go out there and you make this deal, and you don't add someone that's really going to come in and make a big impact, then, you don't want depth to me if you're the Cubs. You want someone that's going to come in and make a difference. I feel like that's kind of where the Cubs are right now. So let's start with the worst team in baseball, Colorado. Kyle Freeland is a former ace. I would say of their team, he's still one of the best pitchers. An earned run average on that bad team of 452. In his last 14 starts, how good has he been? He's got a $16 million salary that the Cubs would probably have to pick up and then an option for next year. Freeland has been pretty good in the past. I mean, and especially pitching in Colorado, right? The thin air of Colorado, where he's been his entire career. But over the years, there's 61-81 record and a 4.52 ERA. It's going to be a lot easier in my mind to pitch at Wrigley, right? A 5.13 earned run average actually now, but a 1-8 record on that bad Colorado team. But when you look at his numbers, I mean, it's not like he's just getting ripped. I mean, the record you can't really hold against him because the team's so bad. A change of scenery would be really good for Freeland, a big guy at 6'4" and 205, a left-hander. But do you want another left-hander? Well, you don't have Steele, but you're going to have this guy next year. Is he someone that you would put at the top of the rotation? Potentially he could be. The funny part about this is trying to figure out if you can get the Freeland that was there in 2018, right? The 17-7 Freeland that ended up in the top 5 of the Cy Young and a 2.85 ERA, and doing that in Colorado. Things haven't been the same since then, but sometimes a change of scenery is important. But also, I remember reading in Earl Weaver's book, the Duke of Earl, right? The manager and Hall of Famer of the Baltimore Orioles for years, about how they would look for guys that just had bad infields and say, well, this guy's, not doing too well, but if you put better infielders there, would it make a difference? Cubs have an excellent infield. Dansby and Nico up the middle. I mean, think about the catch that Nico made in that game to beat the Pirates. Dansby's so consistent defensively. So maybe Freeland's better. I don't watch enough Rockies games to say that their infield's good or bad, but I don't think that Freeland would be an ace of the Cubs staff, but I think that there's a potential for him to slide in and be someone that you're like, you know what, this guy isn't too bad. So we'll start there. Now, the second guy I wanted to get into was Merrill Kelly, and we've talked about Merrill Kelly, free agent at the end of the year, and part of this Diamondbacks team that went to the World Series a few years ago. And he's having a pretty good year. I mean, 6-2 record, a 3.18 ERA. He's made all 14 starts. He's got about 79 strikeouts in 82 innings. He's getting a strikeout an inning. He's only given up 60 hits. And, he's only been pitching in the big league since 2019. 6'2", 200-pound right-hander. I think it would be good for the Cubs to have another right-handed ace. And I think Kelly might be right there with Shota Imanaga at the top of the Cubs rotation if they got him. What's the price you're going to have to give up? Diamondbacks aren't doing a deal without pitching back. They just are. So the Cubs are going to have to give up somebody, and it might be Jaxon Wiggins. It might be Ben Brown. Yeah, depending if they want someone with big league experience. You're not giving up Cade Horton in this deal. And who knows? Maybe there's some other guys I'm not thinking of in the minor leagues, Will Sanders, we talked about him. Grant Kipp, who's, I don't know if he's a prospect, but I think he's someone who could potentially pitch in the big leagues. But you're going to have to give up pitching to get pitching in this deal. I think his price tag could be pretty high when it's all said and done, but he might be really worth it. Now, another guy is Trevor Williams. And I like Trevor Williams. And you're probably like, hey, how do I know that name? Yeah, he was part of the Pete Crow Armstrong trade to the Mets. And now look at him. Pitched for the Pirates, the Cubs, the Mets. Now he's with Washington. But I just feel like, look, he's 3-8. He's got a 5.71 ERA, a career 4.40 ERA. He, to me, is just kind of what you already have. 6'3", 230-pound right-hander. Is he a star pitcher? Is he going to be at the top of your rotation? No. And I think that if you got him, it might be tough for him to stay in the rotation if he doesn't pitch well. Because I feel like Ben Brown would be fighting for the same spot he's pitching in. He's going to be affordable. He's going to be somebody that you could trade for. And it's funny, kind of how guys like that can, can demand such a big price at the deadline just because you need pitching so bad. But he's affordable. And, the Nationals are going to be selling off. And so he's somebody to keep an eye on. Would the Cubs do a deal with the Pirates? And this was a name that popped up on the XM baseball channel. They were talking about Andrew Heaney being a guy that they could potentially go after. I remember this guy coming up, another left-hander, 6'2", 200 pounds, with Pittsburgh. He was with the Rangers. Before that, he was with the Mets and the Dodgers and the Angels and the Marlins. So, he's been around. I mean, And I feel like he's kind of the same thing to me as Trevor Williams, except he's having one of his best seasons. 3-5 record, 3.33 ERA, and 14 starts for Pittsburgh. We just saw the Pirates. It's crazy that they just don't know how to win because they're a pretty good team. They got pitching. I mean, you look through that, that team, and you're like, man, these guys can pitch it. This would be someone that the Pirates would give up. Just wonder who the Cubs would get back in that deal. And then you're going to have to deal with them. So if you trade them somebody that's good, you're going to have to keep looking at them. And remember, we had them and we traded them. That's why you don't do a whole lot of deals with the teams in your division. But the Cubs are close. So maybe a guy that has pitched 12 years in the big leagues with a 54-67 record and kind of coming into his own this year would be worth the risk of going after him. And as you look at the rotation and what's available, is there a blockbuster trade to be made for a sale? And I'd put Merrill Kelly there. And we talked about Zach Gallen. I've talked about him a few times. I think Zach Gallen could be someone that you get, and all of a sudden he just clicks back into being that guy who you had before. So we'll kind of look at that. But as the trade deadline gets closer and the race goes on, and other teams make, you trade Rafael Devers to the Giants. If you're the Red Sox, kept hearing his name pop up in trade deals. They wanted to get rid of him. The Red Sox were tired of dealing with his crap. But it just shows you that teams are ready to make moves. And so I look at the Cubs as being the second tier of teams that could win a World Series, but you need more pitching. Obviously the Dodgers and the Yankees are the top tier. They were in it last year. And, you see the Mets on paper and you think there's a team to keep an eye on. The Phillies obviously have been there. I think the Cubs are right there with that group of teams. But if you add an ace, and it's the problem is that you look at the rotation and you start saying, who are we going to play? Who are we pitching game one? Who are we pitching game two? Who are we pitching game three? To win these series, you got to have either somebody that's just red hot, or you need to have that guy you can count on. Jake Arrieta, game one, boom, let's go. John Lester, game two, let's go. John Lackey, game three, let's throw him out there. Woody, game four. Hendricks, game five. To be able to win these series, you got to have that. But really, you need three guys that you can count on to get the job done. And I feel like the Cubs, because of the injury to Steele, are an ace short. So I'm going to keep on watching this, and I know you guys will. And get in the comment section. Tell me what you think. Now, the second thing is Jameson Taillon. Maybe maybe this is the year that we've kind of waited for on him. And when you make deals, he signed that big 4-year contract. And for a while, he wasn't good enough. It really wasn't. That first year, not good enough. I just don't want anything to happen to what he's doing right now. He's been so good in June. 3-0 record, 2.29 ERA. Just mowing down competition. And you see a guy do this, and then all of a sudden it's like something happens and they tweak something. Don't none of that. And I almost feel like with the Cubs, when Shota gets back, it might be a good idea to go 6-man for a little while and just make sure that everybody gets rest. That we're not pushing anybody. And there's some days off that are coming. The All-Star break's coming. So we're not that far off from either one of these things. But managing arm fatigue to me is really important. And it's important when you have a big lead for first place. Take advantage of it. That's what you do, is you take advantage of it. I've heard how many people talk about the 69 Cubs, and they're like, hey, if Leo just would have, when they had the big lead, used the reserves a little bit, gotten guys rest. Everybody feels like he kind of ran everybody into the ground, and that's a tough thing to have to live with when you had a team that good. So something else to think about, the Jameson Taillon getting it done. It's been really impressive watching him do his thing. Now, a guy that's name's going to pop up and trade rumors, and I would not be shocked if this guy doesn't do one of two things this year. And I'm talking about Jaxon Wiggins. He's emerging now as a legitimate top prospect. He can throw hard, still working on a little bit of command and control stuff, but he to me looks like back end ace stuff, right? And with Ryan Presley, thanks to Ian Happ, hey, why are guys hitting me? Well, here, dude, just what you need to do. Getting better. Daniel Palencia kind of just emerging as like a guy that can get saves and shut doors. Jaxon Wiggins is another guy that you could potentially throw out there and say, hey, man, I just don't see him as a starter. And he may be. But to me, I just see him as like fireballer at the end of the game or near the end of the game. You need big outs. He's coming in, and you guys better be ready. He can hit triple digits. The hitters are so weak now throughout like the minor leagues. The guys that are like the real power pitchers have an easy time until they get to the big leagues, really, with a lot of hitting. And I think he's kind of at that spot where he's kind of there, but with teams looking at the Cubs and the Cubs looking at teams as trade partners, if I'm making a deal for Merrill Kelly or Zach Gallen, or if I'm the Braves and I'm going to trade you Chris Sale, right, which is all those teams, it's a white flag going up. I need a guy that I can bring in and immediately is going to make an impact. Jaxon Wiggins could be that guy. So I think he's going to make an impact one way or the other, whether it's pitching out of the bullpen for the Cubs this year or being traded. But he's really good. And the reason I'm talking about him is he had another dominant outing and led the Knoxville Smokies, to a no-hitter, a 7-inning no-hitter. Now, they didn't let him go all 7, but A.J. Puckett and Sam Armstrong helped throw the first no-hitter since 2022. Now, this was only a 7-inning no-hitter, but it's still cool. They did it against a team called the Columbus Klingstones. That's a Braves affiliate, so maybe the Braves are sitting there watching like, hey, we can give up Chris Sale, get this guy. I think people would be pretty excited about that. All right, look, that's it for the show today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. It's going to be a fun week in Chicago. Shout out to my man Baron Huber, who got me a Cubs Blues hoodie with the bear playing guitar. I love that. My nephew was at the game on Saturday, Hudson. So, I mean, like, it's just cool, man. Like, it's that time of year. And we're planning on coming up there, too. I got to figure out when and where, but I got a guy that wants to come that you guys would know and do some live shows right there in Wrigleyville. A guy that might have played a few years in the big leagues. Maybe played a lot for the Cubs. Maybe he should be a Cubs Hall of Famer. So if you guys tell me that you would come, I might have to do it. Like, subscribe, thumbs up. Thank you guys for hanging out. We're going to have another great day on top of the mountain in the Central Division. God, it feels so good to be in first, doesn't it? And it can go by fast. But look at the Cubs' record against the Central. Hey, I like it. Got to beat those teams in your division. Who's up next? Yeah, bring them on. Brew Crew, go Cubs.